how did you come to work on Star Trek Picard?
I think it was in November 2020. Does that work? Yeah, 2020. I um, I was contacted on Twitter by somebody I didn't know, and he was asking me some questions on, where I knew all that stuff from, and um, if I had ever in any way worked on the Star Trek production in an official way. And I just, replied in a friendly way, said, no, I'd helped here and there for some books and helped with a little research, but never anything official. Then I was asked, would you consider signing an NDA for if you ever should work on something like Star Trek? I said, yeah, well, absolutely, I could do that. And when I read NDA, I think I had no idea what an NDA was, so I had to look it up. And then I realized, who's that guy? And then I Googled his name and found a Wikipedia article, and it was Dave Blass. And I signed the NDA one day later. And then I got the first research requests and started working.
So they really gave you information, okay, we need information about different types of beer, and you then, okay.
So I didn't really get any script information, and it was always very, very obscure, but which is the good thing, which is fun, because now I finally realize how all the puzzle pieces fit together. So I got I had to do research on some things that could be seen in an Alien Bazaar, or to write a 101 on Ferengi, or so many things. I mean, if I just go back through my the emails and the stuff I put together, so many things that didn't end up in the episodes also, but anything. So I did research on which plants I used in Starship Crew Quarters. Mm-hmm. So, I had the screenshots, and then I used some programs to identify the plants, because I had no idea what plants they were, and put that together. And, all those fun things that I know, finally or later when the episodes would be shown, I would take a look at and, try to find out, what is that, or does it make sense, or is it, has this been seen before? So all those things. Basically, I did what I always do, just in an official capacity for Star Trek, and not just for my own pleasure.
How would you do this? So you talked about screenshots. You already have these screenshots, or you're doing the screenshots on the DVDs on the fly?
I have a screenshot database. So for basically everything from TOS to the end of Enterprise. Okay. And if you tell me, okay, Jörg, I want to know when in Star Trek were apples seen, I just type in Apfel, it's in German, obviously, and then gives me all the screenshots I took of apples on Star Trek. And then, because I took the screenshots, how many years ago is that now? 20 years ago. It's really low quality, and it's not HD. So when I do that, I take new screenshots to send to them, because I want to have the best quality of screenshots. And that's how I do it.
Do you want to tell me more about the technical details of your database? So is it actually a database, let's say an Oracle database, or is it some kind of an Excel sheet? Or
Oh, it's just folders and folders, nothing else.
Okay.
I'm really basic about those things, but as long as it works for me, it works for me. It's just, I have, for every episode, I have a folder. And then, the 26 episodes of TNG season 1 are in the TNG folder, then they are in the TNG folder. And when I watch the episodes, I just, took notes, as I still do when I watch episodes, and took screenshots of all the people, the aliens, the planets, planet surfaces, props, starships, anything I found interesting in an episode, sometimes uniforms, or not uniforms, maybe uniforms, outfits, aircast displays, anything I found interesting. And it's all in this episode folder, and they all end with the name of the episode, so I can find more easily. And then I just type in whatever I want to find out. So, for example, what I use all the time is some starship shots. There are some famous starships seen in season 3 of Star Trek Picard that we knew before, and they are shown from a certain angle. And if I want to find a very similar angle from TNG or one of the older Star Trek shows, I just type in Enterprise D or Voyager, or one of the other, Excelsior, and then I get like 1,000 screenshots or something like that, and then I just go through them and find the right one, so I can have a good comparison. Defiant, for example, I found a good one that I had to flip, so it would work better. So that is what I can use my database for. But usually I don't use the old screenshots anymore because, as I said, low quality. I have to take new ones using one of the streaming services, or well, still the DVDs or Blu-rays.
So when you start writing on an article, you actually have the theme already in hand and then revisit your screenshot database, or how do you structure your writing articles?
I mean, everything I write about is usually visual, so there I always need screenshots. I think the only exception are the articles, or the article I wrote about classical music on Star Trek. Of course, I had to listen to what I was writing about. I start by looking at my screenshots, and then I go through the episodes, usually in fast forward, and take new screenshots. I read the scripts to find additional appearances of something. For example, I can tell you the next thing I plan to do, but I guess won't have time to do, is an article, well, actually 2 articles. One article about all commercially available models that ended up being used on Star Trek as like background decoration, not to make starship models that are seen in external scenes, but really just as props on somebody's desk or somebody's table. I want to do that. And the other one I want to do is an article about all logos or emblems that were originally designed by fans and in the end, made it into official Star Trek, episodes or films, basically. Yeah. So what I would do is I would go through my screenshots and type in model and get all images I have of models on somebody's desk, and then take new screenshots. Then I would check Memory Alpha, because I also have an article on that, and look for more appearances that I might have forgotten. And the same with I can't do that with the alien logos or the logos because, I could go through all my logo screenshots, but that would take too long. I think I know many already, and then I would do some more research on the internet and find some more logos that were made by fans and used in the end. Then I would assemble new screenshots. Then I would start writing the article, preferably in English. Used to do this in German, and Bernd translated everything, but now I can do things like that also in English, and send it to Bernd and wait for him to tomorrow or in 2 months or in 10 years turn it into an article, basically. Okay. So that's how I do this. Yeah.
Okay. And for the Memory Alpha articles, is there one special one that is the one you're most interested in, invested most of the time in?
I think the classical music one, I really spent a lot of time on. Memory Alpha mostly for me was adding images, not necessarily writing text. But I do think the one about classical music, which Bernd also ported to Ex Astro Scientia, is the one I spent most time on, because, some of the songs I knew because I had heard about them or heard them at school, or I had them on CD already. Some I had to identify using some kind of, programs that you can use that identifies music. Sometimes I had to go through the subtitles of German or French or some other languages, because they sometimes had the names which were not found in the scripts. So that took a lot of time, but in the end, was a lot of fun also. And I wish, this is not going to happen, but I wish there was a soundtrack release of all the classical music that has ever been heard on Star Trek. I would totally buy that. I don't mean the exact recordings. I guess that would be impossible, but just the CD on the songs that you hear in the episodes and films. I would love that, because I like listening to classical music, but all those songs have a second meaning because they remind you of, for example, Star Trek First Contact, Ballon Sonore. When you hear that, I'm getting goosebumps just saying this. Crazy. I'm going to watch First Contact for the first time in 2 years, in a few days. And, the song was also used in Star Trek Picard when Worf first appears. So I would love that. And that article really took a long time to research and to write about, and also update when more episodes were shown that featured classical music. Yeah.
Maybe that's a playlist on Spotify already, the classical CD you're talking about, because nowadays you can have compilations of music in a track list.
I should totally check that out. You're right. I'm in those ways very old-fashioned. I have everything on CD. I listen to music on CD and not on. I do have Spotify. Yeah, actually, I should check that out. You're very right. Yeah.
But you don't have vinyls.
No, never had, and my family also, as far as I remember, never had a record player. So no, not yet. Who knows?
Probably topic change or diving in a bit different direction. So, what do you think about the decision in Memory Alpha that TAS is canon, the animated series?
Wonderful.
Yeah. Do you think it has helped bring shows like Lower Decks or Prodigy in there? And how did they all influence or newer shows?
I mean, you mean like making it canon on Memory Alpha or just the animated series in general?
So my impression is that at one point really canon was only the live action series, but then Memory Alpha was there, and from my impression is that more and more people got to know about this part, the animated series, and now we have 2 more animated series in the list, like the Lower Decks and Prodigy. How do you think that plays together, where stuff that was previously only known in the original animated series now suddenly may have appeared in other episodes?
Well, I love whenever we see, for example, on Lower Decks, any alien that was originally introduced in the original series, in the animated series. And for me, this was always canon. So, I mean, it was really hard to get the animated series in Germany back in the day. I think I do have it on video cassette somewhere. And when I watched it on German television, they always cut together 2 episodes and, I don't know, cut out 10 minutes or so. So I recorded that also from Tele5 or something. That was horrible. But, for me, it's always been canon. I mean, for me, it's just any other callback they do to the original series or to TNG when they pick some alien or something that was introduced on the animated series. I don't know. For me, it's like totally normal and nothing special. That's how I see it. Yeah.
And have you been involved in so another thing that I remember from Memory Alpha is this PropWorks auction discussion about what is canon and what is not. That we suddenly had access to the Picard family album, for example, and then people started putting in stuff from there. What is the feeling about these things that appeared somewhere where that something appeared in the background? So how do you take this?
I like that Memory Alpha says if it was seen in the background, even if you cannot read anything, but we now have better images of that. I love that because, I mean, I loved that before that because I could finally properly decipher all the things that were put on the set. And now I like it even more, having kind of worked on the show. I wrote I helped write some of the text that you see in season 2 in the NASA exhibition of Star Trek Picard. There's Nomad and there are some other objects. And I helped write some of the text. And, I'm happy that these things, if there are better images, are considered to be canon also. So I have absolutely no problem with that. I think that for the Picard family album, for example, I only would accept those pages. And I mean, you can take a look at which pages are open in Generations and Nemesis that were actually opened on screen. The other pages, they can be put into background information like we do now, I think. But the ones that are actually seen should be just treated like any other source we have on Memory Alpha. So I'm happy that we are doing this because I know there's so much additional information that otherwise we could not use. And I always find it great when you see that some of the people writing the Star Trek episodes or doing research for for the things they want to put on screen, they use Memory Alpha, obviously, and they sometimes use small details that only appear in those background, in those LCAS displays or something that you see in the background that they could only find because it's on Memory Alpha. And that makes these things even more canon. And, I like that. I love that.
You're also an administrator on Memory Alpha. Have you ever been involved in any policy discussions there?
I haven't actually done anything administrator-wise in 8 years, 10 years or so. I rarely edit anymore. I sometimes add something when I find something that I thought nobody else has done before or has added before, but I'm not really involved in much anymore. So can't really tell you anything. And even back then, there were some hot topics that people went on and off about and discussed all the time. Additional information that we, like when the remastered episodes appeared for the first time, which images do we treat as the original, or which images do we use? The new planets, for example, or the old planets, or the new starships. The iMorg ship, for example, looks completely different in the remastered version of Spock's brain. Those details. I remember this discussions back then, but mostly, it's been so long, I don't worry about that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I agree how things are done at the moment. If there were some people that wanted to get rid of all the background information that is only seen in those auction pieces, for example, I think I would get more involved again, because I would actually hate that. I love having those additional details. But apart from that, I'm okay how things are going, and I'm just using the site all the time, sometimes adding or editing some small things. And that's how I feel about it at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the production staff, now the production staff has access to your knowledge, but do you think in the past, when you saw an episode and then something was stated or seen there, it would have been so easy if they did their research? Is there something that bothers you where they didn't do their research?
Because I totally know they do their research, and they use Memory Alpha all the time, and also ex Astro Scientia. So, because I know how hard they work, and how much time is put into things, and also how much I worked. And well, sometimes there is just no time to find everything, and that's how the business goes, basically. But I do know that they use the pages, and I'm really happy about that, because that makes things more authentic, and they can profit from all the research that has been done by the users of Memory Alpha and what Bernd has done.
And this is the situation now, but probably I was thinking about old shows, like from the Next Generation, DS9 or Voyager time, where you thought, okay, there's something completely different.
I think they did the research. I mean, that is the thing that, for example, on TNG, there is, when you first see Lore and Dr. Soong's lab, you see those, in the background, you see those stickers, I think white stickers with some red logo on them. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting emblem. And then only like years later, I discovered that the same emblem shows up again in Dr. Soong's lab on Terlina 4, or is it 3, in Brothers. So don't underestimate those people. They know what they're doing, absolutely know.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having this talk in English here with us about the Memory Alpha edition and your contribution to it.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
No worries. It was a pleasure, as I said.